It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Well, good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now, right here. I feel like saying from the old Laurel and Hardy cartoon, well, it's another fine mess you've gotten us into. Because we are literally, on the edge of disaster. If you haven't heard, Reid came out yesterday and said, every person who has discussed an issue or complained about the horrors of Obamacare is a liar, telling lies made out of whole cloth. It's Harry's statement. Dirty Harry. Dirty Harry Reid. The traitor of the Senate, the most powerful Democrat in the nation, aside from Barack Hussein, insane, the usurper, the stealer of the throne, the illegal immigrant, the illegal alien, Obama. For Harry Reid to make a statement like that, impugning the honesty and integrity and the political ideology of millions of Americans is unconscionable. He said it because he was trying to throw the Koch brothers under the bus for paying for the ads that feature people who can say, hey, I got stiffed by Obamacare, my premiums went up, or my doctor got lost, or I've got cancer and I can't get to, they canceled my surgery, and, on and on and on and on and on. You've heard many of them. But to sit and call literally tens of thousands of Americans who truly have real horror stories, many of them Democrats, many of them supporters of Obamacare, many of them voted for Barack Obama and Harry Reid, and to call them liars made up of whole cloth. This is from the guy who told us that Romney didn't pay his taxes. Remember that during the 2012 election? It turns out he did. This from the guy who's been promising us that if you just were willing to accept Obamacare, you could keep your doctor if you liked it, and you could keep your insurance plan if you liked it. This from the guy who has been accused of more dirty real estate deals than Donald Trump. He's a proven liar, and I use the word proven. And now he has the unmitigated gall to accuse just run-of-the-mill plain Jane people who don't make $195,000 a year, who haven't been sitting up there in the lap of luxury under a foreign title, which under the original 13th Amendment would have required that he have his citizenship stripped and be kicked out of the country. This guy is a traitor. You spell that with a capital T. Bold, all caps. Traitor. I don't care if he's trying to throw the Koch brothers under the bus. This was the guy who screamed, failed decorum, when Joe Miller called out Obama and screamed out, you lie, during a speech. Turns out he did lie, and about that specific issue. So Joe Wilson wasn't wrong. He just didn't show the proper decorum. Harry Reid is wrong. And as the senior-most Democrat in the nation, outside of the executive, as the senior-most Democrat in the Congress, he is a pathetic fool. You see, according to Dirty Harry Reid, you can say anything you want about the American people, who are his bosses, but you can't say anything about the illegal alien Manchurian usurper candidate who is sitting in the Oval Office making it into a private throne room. Harry's not up for election this year, folks. That's too bad. I wish that somehow or other we could remove the gravity from the planet in the personal sphere of Harry. He makes me ill. We're going to talk this morning about that. We're going to also expose the fact that a British intelligence officer has come out and dropped a bombshell. And he said it publicly during a testimony in England, of course, in which he's stating that Obama was born in Kenya in 1960, that the CIA has conducted DNA tests and has empirical proof that he is not who he says he is, that he cannot draw the connection to his ancestry of either his mother, Anne, alleged mother, and or his grandparents. There is no match to his claimed grandparents, which would destroy the idea of his mother actually having been his real mother. And that not only does the United States have this empirical proof and evidence, but so do some newspapers in Britain, and there is hard physical proof in the documentation from the British intelligence service. It's quite a damning statement. We're going to look at it a little bit because it's interesting. I did a search just out of curiosity. I did a search. I just went onto Google and I typed in British intelligence, Obama, DNA, CIA, and guess what I got? Not a single mainstream media website. Not a single one. Every one of them was an alternative media site. Every one. Isn't that interesting? Our third topic is going to be House hearing. Obama has brought us to a constitutional tipping point. 3 out of 4 constitutional experts testifying, by the way, 3 out of the 4 are liberal, all testified at a House hearing on the judiciary. Jonathan Turley among them. Now, I've read you Jonathan Turley's work before, including his last statement. And here's what he had to say on this incident. I believe we are now at a constitutional tipping point in our system. It's a dangerous point for our system to be in, and I believe that your response has to begin before this president leaves office. No one in our system goes it alone. They're talking about Barack Obama's overreach, and they're making it clear, every one of them, that we are at a point where everything is changed. And this president is responsible for that. He made a lot of other statements, including things that sounded like a dangerous change in our system. He talked about the fact that Obama claims that these are different times and unprecedented times. Here's what he had to say about that. It is simply untrue that we're living in very different or unprecedented times. The framers themselves lived in these times. This is not a different political time. And it should not be used as an excuse for extra constitutional action. This is a guy who voted for Obama, who openly declares that he is in support of most of Obama's programs. What he strongly recommends against is the methodology by which Obama is instituting them. The simple truth is, ladies and gentlemen, that we have a president who has become an imperialist. And if you take our earlier story of this British intelligencer and the fact that there is ample proof that his birth certificate was fraudulently manufactured, he is not qualified to be sitting in the seat. Our fourth and final segment this morning will be a news review. And this is going to be a new section for us, and I got to tell you why. There's so much news. It is a torrent, a fire hose of information that is just pouring out every day. And the truth is, I can't get to them all. Yes, I like to bloviate a little bit and, expose some of this stuff and then give you my take on it. But the truth is, folks, there's more than I can possibly talk about. I mean, and I don't want it to be a question where people are left without information because I can't reach it. So what we're going to do is take the last segment of the day, and I'll do this as often as necessary. If it becomes necessary to make it a final or a final segment of every show, then we'll do that. But we're going to look at it like a news wrap. And I'm going to try to go over these headlines, give you more than just the 10-second snippet bite, which is what you normally get in the news, and then we'll take it from there. And we'll just play along and see how it works. How's that? So let's start with our first topic this morning. Harry Reid is in a roid rage. He went out on the Senate floor twice yesterday, and he made some statements initially, and as a result of that, he then went back out on the floor a little bit later and tried to walk them back, but didn't actually accomplish that. In fact, he can't control himself because Harry Reid is a dangerous man, and there's no denying it. Harry Reid is so drunk on his own Kool-Aid that he actually, in his first statement, had the nerve to say that he used the word all of the Obamacare horror stories. This isn't me saying this. This is him saying this. That every single one of them, all, are untrue, and that they are a lie made up of, quote, whole cloth. Now, I'm going to let you hear it because it's only a minute. And frankly, I would allow you to see it, but I got to tell you what the problem is there, and you guys ought to know this as well. The reason I can't let you see it is because we've got a piece of software that we use that we can't really afford to buy the full-blown version that enables us to share screens and let me show you a screen. And so, based on the fact that we just don't have the money to buy it, we are limited in what I can give you, which is why, this is a radio show and not a television studio, because we don't have the money to build that. So let me just play this for you, and so that you understand the depth of the depravity of this piece of trash. He's calling literally millions of Americans liars. And I got to tell you, this is an embarrassment for our country, because anytime you got a guy like him who would...
All that good news, there's plenty of horror stories being told. All of them are untrue, but they're being told all over America. The leukemia patient whose insurance policy was canceled would die without her medication. Mr. President, that's an ad being paid for by two billionaire brothers. It's absolutely false. Or the woman whose insurance policy went up $700 a month. Ads paid for around America by the multi-billionaire Koch brothers, and the ad is false. We heard about the evils of Obamacare, about the lives it's ruining, and Republican stump speeches and ads paid for by oil magnates, the Koch brothers. But in those tales, turned out to be just that, tales. Stories made up from whole cloth. Lies distorted by the Republicans to grab headlines or make...
Okay. Stories made up of whole cloth. Lies. He said the word lies. Now, Dirty Harry is... I mean, I get it. He's trying to throw the Koch brothers under the bus. The problem, of course, is that he's neglecting to acknowledge the fact that he and the rest of his pals in the Senate and frankly in Congress and across the government are all guilty of the same exact thing, except with George Soros's money and their ilk. He's got lots and lots and lots of donors. In fact, he went to a fundraiser the other day while he was simultaneously, in fact, the same day he threw the Koch brothers under the bus a couple of days ago on camera. He then went to a fundraiser at a billionaire's home. So, you know, this is the age-old biblical adage that before you point out the speck in my eye, perhaps thou shouldst look at the log in thine own. Of course, Harry in the Bible, or Harry in honor, and in Harry in truth, and Harry in honor and integrity, and those two words can never, or those phrases can never be used in the same sentence, because Harry is a liar, pathological, and he's a sycophant, and he is an absolute ideologue. He would lie about anything to protect his position, this administration, and the damage that he's done to the United States of America. He's a traitor. Traitor. Guilty of treason. Now, I'd like to know why the nation is unwilling to hold him to account for it. I'm going to tell you what my impression is, and I'm going to tell you why I think so. The media refuses to talk about the things that are real. When I say that, I'm talking about ABC, NBC, and CBS. I'm talking about MSNBC. I'm talking about Communist News Network, CNN. I'm also talking about Fox News. Now, they've been covering this. But the controlled opposition of Fox only talks about those areas that they feel are important. I wonder why they haven't brought out the bombshell I'm going to talk about next, which is the British intelligence officer who stated in a testimony that Barack Obama is not, was born in Kenya, and therefore his birth certificate is false. I want to know why they won't cover those stories. I want to know why they won't cover and do an expose on his birth certificate. Brent Bazell was out last night. I think he was on Megyn Kelly's show, if I'm not mistaken. And he was talking about an example of how this is happening in the media, just so that you grasp the context of this. When it came to talking about these things, they spent a grand total of 22 seconds talking about this, and 26 minutes, I believe is what he said. I could be wrong now about those. But, I mean, it was seconds compared to 20-some-odd minutes talking about Justin Bieber. There you go, folks. For real. So America is being lied to by omission, which is even worse, frankly, than a flat-out lie, because from the news media, they have an obligation a fiduciary obligation to the citizenry to do better. Dirty Harry Reid. Perhaps the greatest American-born traitor alive. I segment him from Barack Obama because Barack Obama wasn't born in the United States, but that's a whole different story. And we're going to cover that one next. What a great segue. All right. We're going to take a break. When we return, we're going to tackle this, and I'm going to let you hear this British intelligence officer. There's a whole bunch of clips. It was like an hour-long testimony or an hour and a half, but in the first couple of minutes, he covers some amazing things. Obama was born in Kenya. The CIA did a DNA test, which failed to establish his connection to his grandparents. That many newspapers in England are aware of it, that the United States of America has documented empirical proof and won't use it. Okay, we'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Please make sure, if you have an opportunity to, that you work with our sponsors and that you patronize them. These are the folks that keep us on the air every day. Express Mini Marts 1 and 2. 2 is located up on 14 and 63. They are located in West Plains, Missouri, both locations. They have, in their northern facility, they've got Vapory cigarette stuff, Monster Cold Ice Cold Beer Cave. They've got liquor coolers and liquor and stuff like that. But they've also got the best prices on fountain drinks you can get anywhere in the county, and the guaranteed lowest prices on cigarettes. By the way, if you go to that northern location at 14 and 63, there's no city taxes associated to it, and they have a drive-through. If you go to their southern location, directly across the street from People's Park, which is the city where the city pool is in West Plains, then on Porter Wagoner Boulevard, then they have a drive-through there as well. And again, the lowest prices on discount tobacco products, and you will not be disappointed. So make sure that you swing over there and tell them when you get there, whether you go to the drive-through or the counter or whatever, that you heard about it on America's Voice Now. Wits End Classic Barbershop, where I get my hair cut every week, and I use a fellow over there by the name of Jason Whittingham, good American patriot. You can reach him at 417-372-2027 if you need directions or hours of operation. And while you're there, you can swing into the Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop at 257-1776, where they've got virtually everything that you could be interested in related to cigars and pipes. If you have a legal challenge and you need some assistance there, I encourage you to call the law offices of Jason Henry. He's located at 417-256-4100 by phone and at number 10 Court Square on the square in West Plains, and he handles both state and federal civil and criminal cases. If you have an opportunity to swing by Pizza Hut on Porter Wagoner Boulevard on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that would be today, $5 reduced lunch, and on Tuesday nights they have family night and kids under 12 eat free. Outstanding buffet during those windows. And, of course, you can go in any time and get their new hot wings and try those out. They're very good as well. Battery Station, located at 303 Washington Avenue in West Plains. BatteryStation.com, 417-257-7799. Please make sure that you patronize our sponsors. You're listening to America's Voice. You can reach me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. We'll be right back. Gotta love it. And if you can't get to your radio when we're on, and if you're listening on Rooster Radio, Big Country 99, glad to have you on there. But if for whatever reason you can't get to radio, you can always use our listen line, which is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Doesn't cost you anything as long as you don't have you don't have to pay individually for long distance phone calls. You can listen to the entire program without any breaks. That phone number is 415-325-5555. 415-325-0725. 415-325-0725. And you can call in, and you'll get that day's given show. And there is no charge for you. And how awesomely cool, there's no charge for us. Audio Now is the provider of that service. And if you have interest in that for your own radio program or your own blog or whatever, your own podcast, then I encourage you to give them a call or communicate with them via the web. It's at audionow.com. You know, the reality of where this bombshell is coming from on Barack Obama's ancestry and history has long been in contention. But, you know, initially there was a flurry of questions about his birth certificate and legitimacy. And then the mainstream media got the message. Y'all better shut up about this. So they started calling them birthers. You know, this was the idea of let's diminish the viewpoint of these people in the eyes of the public, so we make them look as if they have no integrity and no credibility. But the evidence is overwhelming, ladies and gentlemen, and if you haven't looked into it yourself, then you have done yourself a disservice. In fact, you've done a disservice for the people around you who, with all due respect, look at you as a leader of a circle of influence. Now, there's a guy who just came out yesterday. His name is Shrimpton. He's a British intelligence advisor. And he's coming out making some very bold statements. And he knew that this would make the media because he mentions it. And he's basically reporting that, first and foremost, Obama was born in Kenya, and they've got empirical proof about that, not only in the British intelligence files, but that there are British newspapers even that have that information. Furthermore, that the CIA has done a DNA test on his grandparents, and they cannot draw a correlation between Obama and the alleged parents of his mother. And that also raises the question that his mother was not pregnant in 1961. He was born in 1960. And he states that clearly at that point in time, Kenya was under British intelligence, was under it. Well, I'm going to let you hear it for yourself. You don't need me to tell you. The truth is, the guy has got some very, very damning allegations here. He also says that Rudy Giuliani's people knew, and they sat on the intelligence, and that the Clintons know, including Hillary, and this is going back originally now to the original election. And that's where they came out with things like Bill Clinton saying, you know, this guy should be carrying our bags, and he's not an American. In fact, Hillary was the one who started the whole birther controversy, if you recall. And if you don't, that's because the Ministry of Propaganda has kept it from you. Just stunning to me how, misleading all of this information is, or the lack thereof, because it's not getting out. And when it does get out, when it occasionally makes it out there into the public forum, it's dismissed as tinfoil hats, crackpots, disenfranchised, Obama haters, racists. Nothing of the kind. Why is it we cannot have a national, legitimate conversation about things like a birth certificate, which has clearly been fraudulently manufactured and created? Why? It's inexcusable that the people who have concerns are delegitimized and they're made to look like, crackpots and knuckleheads, and it's shameful, frankly. I'll let you hear this report for yourself because it's pretty darned damning. And, well, you can hear it for yourself. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it.
Senator Barack Hussein Obama is about to come a cropper in the United States. So it's been a pretty good year. For those who don't know the problem with Obama, and by the time this is viewed on the internet, it will probably be all over the newspapers. He was...
By the way, that's where he's wrong, see, because this is now on the internet, and I did a search this morning, and I encourage you to do your own. Go out onto Google and put in, British intelligence, CIA, DNA, Obama, Kenya, and just look at how much mainstream media pops up in the searches. None.
Born in Mombasa in Kenya. It's very interesting because that sits on British intelligence files. His father was close to the Mau Mau. He used to run guns and money into the Mau Mau. He was a link man between the Mau Mau and the German intelligence network in East Africa. And Obama was born in Mombasa in about 1960. His mother, we think, was one of Obama Sr.'s many mistresses. And the woman who is now dead, who is allegedly his mother, wasn't pregnant in July 1961, but Barack Hussein Obama claims to have been born in Honolulu on August 4th, 1961. Now, we have a doctor here, and Dr. Lister would, I think, confirm. I'm not a medical man, but my understanding is that if a lady's giving birth in August, we like to see her pregnant in July.
Very interesting, isn't that? So basically, he's questioning the entire record of his birth, including whether or not his mother, Anne, is really his mother, based on the fact that she wasn't pregnant a month before his alleged birth.
Since it's been established that his alleged mother, wasn't pregnant in the July, his claimed birth on 4th August does seem to be coming under a certain degree of scrutiny. It's also nice to have a DNA relationship with your parents, and the DNA test that was done in respect of Barack Obama's claimed grandparents, I understand the CIA were unable to obtain a match. The CIA did it very well. I believe they did it at a fundraising dinner, and it's absolutely marvellous. If you want to do a DNA test, nothing better than a glass of water. Because what you get with a glass of water, you get saliva for your DNA, and you've got fingerprints as well. It's an all-in-one, do-it-yourself, DIY DNA testing kit. And all the CIA did was slip in. You don't have to ask somebody to do a DNA test. They just took away a couple of glasses. Bag one for grandpa, bag one for grandpa, do a DNA test, no link, end of case. It's quite funny. Rudy Giuliani's people, this is an aside, but I think people are interested because Obama is making a lot of headway at the moment. Rudy Giuliani's people bought me lunch last year because they knew I knew, and Rudy's people were fascinated by this, and he decided to sit on it, apparently, and hold the intelligence back in the hope that he would be the Republican candidate, because he was then being talked about as the front runner, and then he could bounce it on the Democratic Party after the convention in August, which is absolutely crazy. I've been talking to Hillary Clinton's people who seem quite interested. So I don't think it'll be staying secret from
So essentially, the rule here is that not only did Rudy Giuliani know, but Hillary Clinton knew, and of course the whole premise behind this thing was that they would utilize it in their own campaigns, and his point was that Rudy Giuliani was at the time the front runner, and he didn't want to, reveal it because he was keeping it in his back pocket to use as the bombshell to win his own candidacy. So anyway, the point is, and by the way, just for the record, but Wikipedia scrubbed his file the other day, right after this hit. Isn't that interesting? The page has been deleted. Anyhow, this point is basically that we have a usurper in the office of President of the United States. What that tells us is that, and since so many people know it, including, by the way, the UK newspaper, the Daily Telegraph, he specifically mentions them. There's a number of bullet points, and I'll just run them down. There's 10 points. 1, he believes that given the above British intelligence of the year 1960, not 1961, and the place Kenya, not USA, of Obama's birth, Obama would soon be pressured into withdrawing from the presidential race. Now, this, you have to remember, this was recorded back original. This discussion was originally recorded, I think, back in 2008. And second, Senator John Edwards also knew because Shrimpton had briefed him. Former CIA director under Bill Clinton knew, and that included, and he doesn't name which one it was. He just said that the former CIA director under Bill Clinton, and there was actually 3 successive ones: James Woolsey, John Deutsch, and George Tenet. The Kenyan government knows, of course. By the way, in Kenya, they tout him as the president born there. I mean, they make no bones about it. They don't try to hide it. In fact, they proudly declare that the president of the United States is a Kenyan, born and raised in Kenya. The UK newspaper, the Daily Telegraph, knows and has empirical proof. The Honolulu Press is aware that Obama's birth certificate or birth records in Honolulu's Queens Medical Center are faked. And the Honolulu Advertiser knows. These are his claims now. Senator John McCain knows. I don't know how he says that. British intelligence knows because MI5 got the Nairobi Special Intelligence files when Kenya became an independent nation and left British rule. Kofi Annan, the Secretary General of the United Nations from 1997 to 2006, knows. Shrimpton also said something very strange, that Obama's half-sister is actually his full sister, and that the sister is missing. The only half-sister of Obama about whom we are told is Maya, or I think it's Maya or Maya. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce her name. Sotero, the daughter of Stanley Ann Dunham and her Indonesian husband, Lolo Sotero. So basically what it comes down to is that the knowledge is out there, the proof is empirical and undeniable. The individuals who know about it are not exposing it. And, I mean, I guess at this stage in the game, and I'm only surmising this, but if Rudy Giuliani knew back in 2008, and it's ever uncovered that he knew and didn't expose it, if it's ever uncovered that Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton knew and didn't expose it, holding it essentially in their pocket, and that at some point in time when Hillary, lost the or was approached, and we don't know. I mean, I've heard all kinds of things about why Hillary, did not expose it before the primary, including threats made to Bill and Chelsea Clinton. But and look, I don't want to get into a scenario of supposition and throwing, barbs and unknown tinfoils around. But I would like to stick with a statement from this guy that says, hey, these are things that are true. And if he's made the statement, then we can go with that statement he's made and say, okay, so now let's take that information and verify it. I mean, if in fact guys like Giuliani and Hillary and Bill knew, and it's ever exposed that they knew but didn't come forward and tell America, that's why they're going to continue to remain silent now? I don't know. I mean, that's my take on it. I mean, at this point, how could Rudy Giuliani come forward and say, yes, I knew about this in 2008 and I didn't say anything? He would completely destroy himself and any potential political career he may ever have, or any other career he may ever have. I mean, the guy would have to retire in in shame. So the real question is, why can we not have Congress evaluate and look at the true information that we actually do have? And there's plenty of it, folks, that says that Barack Obama's birth certificate was fraudulently made. Why can we, and it's, why can we not get this before the Supreme Court for a full-blown hearing? I mean, the question is, if the guy has no authority to be in the seat, Shouldn't Congress be looking at that instead of holding hearings about how to stop his unconstitutional overreach? Is that not the solution sitting right in the palm of their hand, which they don't see? We're going to talk about that topic next, because in a House hearing, you've got repeatedly constitutional professors, 3 out of 4 of them Obama supporters, who are saying the president is out of control and you guys got to do something. Is Congress unwilling to look at it now because, again, it's the same problem that maybe Giuliani would have, that we can't talk about this because if we do and it comes out that we actually did know, we're ruined. And at this stage in the game, there's so much dirt on so many people that we have to kind of determine and come to the conclusion that there are other forces at work here other than, the normal ones that would jump up to explain the behavior. I mean, in other words, we can no longer look at the behavior and say that this is explainable by any rational standard. The behavior of Congress in failing to block and step up, the failure of Congress to do the duty and hold the desires of their constituents as their prime motivation is not explainable in any rational way, folks. I mean, you've got Republicans now, and I'm talking about this is on the complete other side of the ideological fence, who are screaming bloody murder, but yet they give the guy a blank check for until March of 2015. They didn't just raise the limit, they completely blew the limit off. There's no limit. They didn't say you can borrow another $1 trillion or $900 billion or $1.3 trillion, Mr. President. They said, we're not going to even put a cap on this. We're just going to let you borrow until you feel you've accomplished whatever it is that you need to do. How do you explain that from a House that is very clearly a supermajority of Republicans? See, all I'm trying to say here is that there is enough information out there and enough evidence out there that something else is desperately wrong here. That this isn't all just tinfoil hats and politics and crazy kooks out there. You cannot justify the actions of this Congress, including specifically the Republicans, unless you begin to look at how they could have achieved or arrived at this point. There is other forces at work which are submerged beneath the surface. Are they threats? Are they intimidation? Are they payoffs? We don't know. But something is there, and that's undeniable. Why won't they hear the information and see and do forensic studies on the birth certificate issue? There's already, look, the guy who verified the forensic realities of the Obama birth certificates fraudulent or fraud is an Obama supporter. He voted for him. And yet when he saw the birth certificate and he did his forensic study, and the guy is the leading expert on forged documents in the nation, he said, beyond a shadow of a doubt, it is not real. You've got liberal professors telling us over and over and over, you've got to stop him. And Congress won't do anything. There's got to be more to the issue than just ineptitude, klutziness, keystone coppery. Come on, folks. What's the real motivation here? What's the pressure being applied behind the scenes? We don't know. But one thing we can say is that irrespective of what else we look upon, we do know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this president has done things which these people who are currently in office, both Republican and Democrat, would not have accepted from any other president, including any previous one like Bush or Clinton for that matter. $6 trillion in debt under Obama. $6 trillion. And this is as of 2013. It's now up to $7 trillion. The passage of Obamacare, the nationalizing of 1/6 of our economy, and a federal mandate which is clearly unconstitutional. 2 presidential elections, which the level of voter fraud was very, very significant. Billions upon billions of taxpayer dollars squandered and wasted in crony capitalism projects. Unilateral refusal to follow the law. An attorney general who has been held in contempt criminally and civilly by Congress for hiding the truth from them. An EPA, by the way, a report just came out on the EPA that individuals within the EPA have obstructed a fraud investigation on a guy who was pretending to be a CIA agent and embezzled $900,000. One of these people actually physically threatened someone involved in the investigation. I mean, if one of your coworkers stole $900,000, why would you protect that person? I don't get it. Obstruction, lying, withholding evidence that they knew was documentary proof. What the heck is up with the EPA? How does that agency operate like this? And why do we allow it? There's more to all of this. That's what I'm trying to say. We're going to take a break. When we return, we're going to talk about this House hearing. We're going to give you the idea of what some of these constitutional professors are saying. Because, folks, we are allowing our nation to be stolen from us. And our Congress is complicit. And it's not, this isn't a question of whether or not they should or should know or can do something about it. When you have constitutional professors who are on the same ideological side of the fence, this is a desperate time. We are in a constitutional crisis, and no one can deny that. I don't know how we get around the problem here because, frankly, our hands are all tied. It's in the hands of Congress. And based on all the information we have about Congress and their questionable antics and their questionable actions, we can't even be assured that they'll do something to protect and defend this Constitution and this nation as it was created. We're in big trouble, people. Big trouble. And the traditional defenders have turned into siding with the enemy. You're listening to America's Voice Now. I'd like to hear your feedback on any of these segments that I do. You can always email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. I'd love to hear from you. It's mike@americasvoicenow.org. We'll be right back.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Oh, right. Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host, and you're joining us in our third of 4 segments this morning. If you're just coming in late, we've been tackling some interesting topics, including Dirty Harry Reid in our first segment, and how he has accused Americans of being liars and telling lies of whole cloth about the true horrors of Obamacare. Wow. All of the stories are untrue, he says. All. Not a single truthful American. We're supposed to believe that Harry Reid is truthful, but millions of Americans are lying. Our second topic was the discussion of this British intelligence member, who's also a barrister over there. By the way, anytime you got a member of the bar, his statements are subject to being questioned because he's got a loyalty to the bar, not to the nation. But anyway, he's exposed that Obama was born in Kenya, not in the United States. The CNA has empirical proof, including DNA tests, that show that Ann was not his mother, that his grandparents and his DNA don't match, even if they're only half his grandparents, the white half on his mother's side. And that lots and lots and lots of people have all of the evidence here, and they're just sitting on it. That alone should be enough from the source now, where we're not talking about, some guy who's a blogger sitting in his basement that's done this. We're talking about a guy who's a member of British intelligence. I think it's worthy of a question. But in this topic, we're going to talk about the idea that a House hearing occurred yesterday, and a group of constitutional professors and experts, 3 out of the 4 of whom are Barack Obama supporters, including Jonathan Turley, who, without a doubt, is an Obama. I mean, he states he voted for Obama and that he supports most of his policies. Where he draws the line is the way in the methodology by which Barack Obama is instituting these policies. And at least I will say one thing, and I've read Turley's blog. It's jonathanturley.com. It's Turley, and his first name is Jonathan, Jonathan. But you got to give it to the guy because he openly admits he voted for Barack Obama, that he supports most of his policies. We're talking about the social justice stuff. But he's also enough of a critical thinker, and he has enough integrity to say, but as a constitutional professor, what he's doing, and as a constitutional expert, what he's doing is wrong, and we must stop him. I agree with what he's trying to do, but his method is wrong. See, Turley here is saying that the Machiavellian principle of the end justifies the means is wrong. And for that, ladies and gentlemen, he's right. Nothing justifies bad behavior. You can't get good by doing bad. Last time he testified, which was, a couple weeks ago, here's what he had to say. He was questioned by Bob Goodlatte. He's the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. By the way, for those of you in Missouri who listen, Jason Smith, our congressman from the 8th District, sits on the Judiciary Committee. So Goodlatte asked him the question. He introduced him, Professor Turley, the Constitution, and the system of separated powers is not simply about stopping one branch of government from usurping another. It is about protecting the liberty of Americans from the danger of concentrated government power. How does the president's unilateral modification of an act of Congress affect both the balance of power between the political branches and the liberty interests of the American people? And Turley answered, "Thank you, Chairman. The danger is quite severe. The problem with what the president is doing is that he's not simply posing a danger to the constitutional system. He's becoming the very danger the Constitution was designed to avoid. That is the concentration of power in every single branch." Now, he went on to say, first of all, I want to bring something to your attention, because this is probably the extension of what Turley was saying, and in large part where he got the idea. This was Thomas Jefferson in a letter. "When all government, domestic and foreign, in little as in great things, shall be drawn to Washington as the center of all power, it will render powerless the checks provided of one government on another, and we will become as venal and as oppressive as the government from which we separated." So what he was saying there is that, and for the record, he was not talking about foreign governments. He was talking about governments within the state, within the federal United States. In other words, the state governments and the federal government being kind of co-merged, if you will. And when all that power is drawn up into Washington alone, and Washington becomes the leader, and the 10th Amendment and state sovereignty is eviscerated, all the checks and balances in our system will be worthless. Turley went on to say, "This Newtonian orbit that the three branches exist in is a delicate one, but it is designed to prevent this type of power concentration. There is two trends going on which should be of equal concern to all members of Congress. One is that we have the radical expansion of presidential powers under both President Bush and President Obama. We have what many once called an imperial presidency model of largely unchecked authority. And with that trend, we also have the continued rise of this fourth branch. We have agencies that are quite large that issue regulations. The Supreme Court said recently that agencies could actually define their own or interpret their own jurisdiction. Now, that quote goes directly to my point that every agency in existence is extra-constitutional in its nature, because we never gave Congress the power to subdelegate our authority, our limited power of attorney to them, onto unelected, unaccountable agencies who don't even take an oath of office, don't take an oath to the Constitution. And this fourth branch of government, by Turley's own admission, the Supreme Court recently gave them permission to define their own jurisdiction and interpret it. Ladies and gentlemen, okay, I don't want to get onto the topic of administrative agencies because we'll get drawn off on that. And you all know, if you listen at any reasonable, for any more than one of these episodes, that administrative agencies, in my opinion, are the absolute downfall of the Republic for the last 100 years. With the creation of these administrative agencies have come massive rules and regulations which even Congress doesn't understand and hasn't passed. And since our Constitution declares emphatically that only Congress can make law, we have a constitutional crisis there too. So that was a couple of weeks ago. Now let's bring it up to date because we've got about 14 minutes left in this segment. They had a second hearing about what they should do. This is the same Judiciary Committee now, and Turley was back. And he's warning that we are facing an imperial presidency. His words, not mine. Quote, the name of this hearing, by the way, is Enforcing the President's Constitutional Duty to Faithfully Execute the Laws. Okay, that's the topic and the subject name of the hearing. And this is on health care, this is on immigration, this is on, the Defense of Marriage Act, the government's failure to honor it. I mean, I had a guy say to me yesterday, well, the Defense of Marriage Act was an executive order. No, it wasn't. Look at the name, Defense of Marriage Act. It was passed by Congress. It just goes to show you, folks, that there is a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of just brash assumptions by people that have no basis in reality. I mean, where did somebody get the idea that DOMA was an executive order? It says Defense of Marriage Act. ACT. That would make it an act of Congress. So, Turley claims that we are at, by the way, he's a professor at George Washington University. And basically he's stating that we have reached a constitutional tipping point. Now those are his words, folks, not mine. And that's a quote. My view is that the president has, in fact, exceeded his authority in a way that is creating a destabilizing influence in a three-branch system. I want to emphasize, of course, this problem didn't begin with President Obama. I was critical of his predecessor, President Bush, as well. But the rate at which executive power has been concentrated in our system is accelerating. And frankly, I am very alarmed by the implications of that aggregation of power. What also alarms me, however, is that the two other branches appear not just simply passive, but inert in the face of this concentration of authority. And what he was saying there, folks, is that he sees the danger. It's clear for anyone to see. But these two other the two other branches, I should say, the judiciary and the legislative, aren't raising the alarm, and they're not fighting back. In fact, it's even worse. They are sitting there paralyzed in fear. And right now, in Congress, you've heard the statements yourself on the news. They're in what's called analysis paralysis. They don't know what to do. The upshot, by the way, of this hearing is that what they've determined is that impeachment is out of the question because they can't get it through Dirty Harry Reid in the Senate, and the Senate sycophants. But what they are going to do is file a lawsuit. And there are some legislative things that they're trying to do which would force, as an example, the courts to fast-track this stuff, to get it straight to the Supreme Court, as an example, which, frankly, will never work because it's going to take Congress and the entire Senate to approve of that legislation. So you can bet that's never going to happen. The truth of the matter is they don't need a piece of legislation to do this. This Congress can take this straight to the Supreme Court. They did it during don't you remember during the Bush and Gore election issue where they went to the Supreme Court to get it settled because it was a matter of such national importance. It affected the election, and we couldn't remember, we didn't even have a president for a while, really. Well, this is no different. This is a president who has, for all intents and purposes, become our greatest fear. A tyrannical imperialist who is acting in a dictatorial fashion. They don't need some piece of legislation to drag this before the Supreme Court. I think it's more of a stall tactic than anything. He went on to say, the fact that I happen to think the president is right on many of these policies does not alter the fact that I believe the means by which he is doing it is wrong, and that this can be a dangerous change in our system. And our system is changing in a very fundamental way, and it's changing without a whimper of regret or opposition. This November, you should have that emblazoned on your forehead. Congress is allowing this change without a whimper of regret or opposition. In November, what are you going to do? Elizabeth Price Foley. She's another law professor that was there. She is an educator at the Florida International University College of Law. And she basically stated that Congress has become superfluous. Now, if you define the word superfluous, it means unnecessary. Here she says, quote, situations like this, these benevolent suspensions, as they get more and more frequent and more aggressive, they're eroding our citizens' respect for the rule of law. And she's right. Listen, when the laws become so numerous and confusing, and there is no respect for the rule of law by those who declare the law to be the law itself, but exempt themselves from it, if they have no respect for the rule of law, why should we? She goes on to say, we are a country of law and not men. It's going to render Congress superfluous. She went on and said, he is simply benevolently suspending portions of the law he doesn't like. And she was talking there about the issues of Obamacare and immigration, where he's just unilaterally declared, well, we're not going to deport them. We don't have to. We're not going to follow the law. She went on to look at Congress and said to them, if you want to stay relevant as an institution, I would suggest you not stand idly by and let the president take your power away. Now, you all heard me comment on this in a previous segment or episode or whatever you want to call it, in which, after the State of the Union address, I expressed my incredulity that the president said, and he said this not in one but in two State of the Union addresses, that I am going to bypass Congress with my phone and my pen, essentially, and I'm going to act where they won't. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a threat. It wasn't a statement. It was a threat. Since you won't acquiesce to my demands, I will simply go around you. And I could not believe my eyes. I watched the entire leftward side of the audience stand up and clap for their own demise. Twice. They are already irrelevant. Now, Gerlach, from Pennsylvania, said impeachment is, quote, surely extremely divisive within the Congress and the nation generally, and it would divert the attention of Congress from other important issues of the day. With all due respect, Mr. Gerlach, and I'm not suggesting that impeachment's the solution because you'll never get it through the Senate, but I got to tell you something. There is no other more important issue of the day. Despite the fact that you had Ben Affleck in for a congressional hearing on the collapse of the Republic of Congo, how about the collapse of the Republic of the United States of America? Is that not a more important issue? Oh, my gracious. Ladies and gentlemen, our country is coming apart by the minute. I am... Okay, I'm going to sum this segment up with this, and I'm going to use Turley's own words. The growth of the executive power is accelerating, and it has brought us to a constitutional tipping point. I want you to hear it again. I believe we are now at a constitutional tipping point in our system. It's a dangerous point for our system to be in, and I believe that your response has to begin before this president leaves office. No one in our system goes it alone. While I agree with the president on most of his policies, it does not alter the fact that I believe the means by which he is doing it is wrong, and that this continued acceleration is a dangerous change in our system. It is simply untrue that based on the president's claims that we're living in different times. Quote, "It is simply untrue that we're living in very different or unprecedented times. The framers lived in these times. This is not a different political time, and it shouldn't be used as an excuse for extra constitutional action." Folks, we are beyond salvage on a political basis at this point, I believe, with this Congress. This election is going to determine whether the United States of America collapses into a civil conflict that will once again force the watering of the tree of liberty with the blood of American citizens and tyrants alike, or whether there is some means and method by which, under the current Constitution, this Congress can maybe separate itself from its own suicidal rush. You're listening to America's Voice Now. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to tackle our last topic, which is basically going to be the stories that are so numerous out there that I just want to tap onto some of these headlines because there's just a fire hose of them. We'll be right back. When you before we go, if you have an opportunity to visit with our sponsors, I would greatly appreciate your supporting them. They keep this program on the air, on the radio, and these are the folks that, for all intents and purposes, keep this show moving for you. Make sure that you visit our friends over at Wits End Classic Barbershop at 417-372-2027 on the square in West Plains, where you can get a great haircut for $10, old-style hot lather shave. While you're there, you can swing into the Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop and get yourself, or somebody who's special to you, cigars, tobacco, for pipes, accessories of all kinds. If you're in need of legal services, please contact the law offices of Jason Henry. They handle civil and criminal cases. They handle personal injury cases from automobile accidents. And they handle state and federal cases. If you've got a federal gun case, Jason Henry is the guy for you. 417-256-4100. Pizza Hut on Porter Wagoner Boulevard. Today is reduced lunch special, and every Tuesday and Thursday. And then on Tuesday evenings, kids under 12 eat free. Family night. Make sure that you see the Battery Station at 417-257-7799, batterystation.com, all located at 303 Washington Avenue. And our friends over at Mini Mart Expresses 1 and 2, where they have an outstanding drive-through, one located on 14 and 63, the other on Porter Wagoner Boulevard across from the city pool. Guaranteed lowest prices on tobacco products and fountain drinks. We'll be right back. Last segment, guys, and we're going to try something a little bit different today. You know, the fire hose of truth, fire hose of news, the fire hose of information is just gushing. And, you know, I get it. I may, make some of these topics go on longer than they ought to because I'm interjecting my own philosophy and my own viewpoint on them. But I want people to recognize them for what they are. But the truth is that there's so much of it out there, I can't possibly share it all with you. Even if I, were to try to give this a shorter shrift, which is what you see in the mainstream media, right? I mean, they'll pull something up like this article that I just talked about with, Dirty Harry before, or the House hearing, and they give it, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, even a minute or two. I think this stuff deserves more than a minute or two. I mean, are we not talking about the same country you and I live in? I mean, is this some other reality or not? So what I've tried to do here, or what I'm going to try to do in this segment, and we'll do it as often as it's necessary, but what I'd like to do is to just talk about some of the other issues that are out here, because there are just tons of news stories that you need to know about. Yesterday, the Supreme Court ruled that police authority in home searches without a warrant is now allowed, as long as one person in the residence consents. And it doesn't even have to be someone who has authority to consent. They don't have to even live there. So let's use this example. This is a complete and utter abuse of the Fourth Amendment. The police go to the home. They knock on the door. You tell them, get lost. Come back with a warrant. You leave the house. They're monitoring and observing from a car across the street or a camera. They go back over to the house and they knock on the door, and your 19-year-old son answers the door, and they say, we're here and we want to search the property. And he doesn't know the law. He says, well, sure, come on in. Boom. They're allowed. The solution, I think, put up a permanent letter, frame it, put it under glass so the weather won't destroy it or something like that, and put up a permanent note on your door. There is no entry to this premise without a warrant. And then have every member of your family sign it. That should resolve the problem. I saw a guy the other day who put up a floor mat. A doormat, I mean. It was one of those straw ones, and he had it, it it just said one thing: come back with a warrant. I'm like, there you go. Now, of course, would that hold up in court? I don't know, but I think the letter thing probably would. And it doesn't have to be so obtrusive that, your neighbors can read it from across the street, but it should be clear enough that if somebody's up there standing at the door, they can't avoid seeing it. Maybe attach it straight to the door. I don't know. But you got to, look, folks, your rights are being stripped from you so fast at this point that, it's unimaginable that we can continue at this pace and have a republic in any reasonable window of the future. The EPA, news story, officials obstructed a fraud investigation. EPA officials obstructed a fraud investigation. They made physical threats against investigators, against the inspector. And by the way, none of this was prosecuted, even though evidence was given to a board to review and remove that employee. He was never prosecuted. Two individuals, at least two, have refused to provide interviews, and they've hidden evidence against the guy who embezzled $900,000 pretending to be a CIA agent. Now, you can't get more bizarre than this, folks. This is like the plot of some kind of a crazy knuckleheaded sitcom or some ABC news or a television drama. This guy was pretending to be a CIA agent. He said he was, and he was submitting expense reports for his travel expenses all over the world. Hong Kong, Taiwan for a couple of weeks. He was going all over, Asia and Europe, and he was telling his boss, "Well, I'm a CIA agent, and I work for them simultaneously as the EPA." Well, first of all, why was the EPA paying off on CIA expenses? Nobody can answer that question. Secondly, $900,000? He wasn't showing up for work, but he was still getting paid by the EPA. And it turns out later on, under his own admission, when he was brought to court, and he's now been convicted, but he was sitting there languishing, hanging out in hotels at, these extravagant $800,000 a night hotels and bringing prostitutes in or whatever the heck he was doing. These people were covering for him. Why? You got to be kidding me. I mean, if your coworker had embezzled $900,000 from the company while fooling you into thinking he was a top secret, secret squirrel CIA agent, I don't know about you, but I'd be insulted and angry that I was played for a fool by somebody who purported to be my friend and coworker, and I'd be the last guy that would be trying to sweep his dirt under the rug. But not in this EPA. Oh, this is the same EPA, by the way, that was just caught not revealing the fact that they had secret email addresses that they were using outside of government monitoring, so that they could utilize these for emails that they didn't want anybody else to see, because all government email has to be stored and retained, right? I mean, guys, and this is the same EPA now that wants control of all of our water supply and has just, come out with brand new rules to make your wood stove obsolete. I mean, you got to be kidding me, folks. You're kidding. This stuff is so over the top. Okay, let's talk about Connecticut. Now, look, they've passed a law that on January 1st you were supposed to turn in, you were supposed to submit an application to have your assault weapon registered. And magazines. How they're going to qualify that, I don't know, because magazines don't have serial numbers. I mean, a gun does, but the magazines don't. And any magazine that was, over 10 rounds had to be registered. Well, I mean, there's no serial number, so you could say, well, I own 5 and actually own 12. I mean, the whole thing is just ridiculous. So everybody was required to have these applications in by the 1st. Apparently, they got some 50,000 applications from idiots in Connecticut who actually felt that they were going to follow the law. And anyone whose application was received after January 1st is now considered in violation of the law. And they've been giving letters out stating that they have a couple of options, which is to permanently disable the weapon, sell it to a gun dealer, get it out of the state, or turn it into them. I can't imagine what they're going to do with them. And they're now threatening to go and confiscate these weapons, I'm assuming door to door, because I don't know how else you're going to do it. And I got to tell you, folks, if they tried to go door to door and confiscate weapons in the state of Connecticut, and by the way, they only got like 50,000 or so applications, and there are an estimated 300,000 of these assault weapons, quote unquote, in the state. So what that really tells me is this. About 250,000 American patriots said, get stuffed. What that also tells me is that if they try to go and collect from the 250,000 Americans, one of them, at least one of them, is going to say, get off of my property, mush mouse, first I blow your head off. Remember that cartoon when you were a kid? Mush Mouse and Pumpkin Puss. Pumpkin Puss had a shotgun that had a bent up barrel, so the barrel would come down, and he was always shooting at Mush Mouse. Well, somebody's going to get shot, and some blood is going to spill, whether that is from the law enforcement who is tyrannically stealing and confiscating weapons from Americans who have every right to own them, or whether that's from an American who determines that he needs to defend his home and his family and fires upon them. But I got to tell you, folks, this may well be the proverbial spark in the powder room. This may well be the incitement of the second shot heard round the world. And I've got to tell you, if this government, whether that you want to classify it as federal or state, attempts to confiscate weapons from Americans, and any blood is shed on either law enforcement's or civilian side, these politicians will be responsible for the beginning of the Second Civil War in America. Okay, I posted a link up on our website about the complete list of Barack Obama's scandals, misdeeds, crimes, and blunders. And this is only accurate as of September of 2013, so the list is quite a lot longer, actually. But you'll be interested to read it, so I would strongly encourage you to, because it's literally pages long. And it will remind you and refresh your memory about some of the things which you may or may not have forgotten about, but, you know, I think it's worthy. Okay, new news. The police officers who stood like an execution firing line squad and killed a homeless guy will not be charged under with federal charges. Now, there's a video. It's up on America's Voice Now. It's up on Facebook. It's up on patriotfb.com. And I want you to go look at it. This is a guy who was homeless. The video is about 2 or 3 minutes long. It shows this guy standing there, and he's holding some kind of a knife. And they repeatedly keep telling him to drop the knife. He's separated from these police by somewhere it looks to be about 50 feet. Or, you know, give or take. I mean, it's being shot from across the road, so I don't know the exact footage. But what I can say, and he's yelling, of course, and there's, you know, anyway, at one point he starts to walk sideways away from these officers, or parallel to their line, and they're standing in a line, and they open fire. 46 shots in 5 seconds by 6 officers. Only 11 of them hit, but they killed the guy. No penalty, no prosecution, nothing. Federal or state. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard me say repeatedly that we live in a police state, and I will not back off from that statement. It is the truth. It was then. It is now. We live in a state of abject government-sponsored terrorism of you. Make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen. Where we are is at the collapse of liberty, freedom, and, quite honestly, our republic. We are virtually at the point now where our police are militarized, they're receiving training, they are receiving men and material, they are staging that information around the nation, and it's all being built up for a reason, and there's nothing that justifies it. Nothing. The American people are not these dangerous criminals that we're purported to be. Frankly, if all of these gun people were so dangerous, there wouldn't be any anti-gunners left, would there? I mean, it's just incomprehensible to me that we continue to keep allowing this over and over and over and over and over again. So, to continue on with some of the stuff that's going on here that I can't necessarily talk about every day because there's just so much of it. There was an article, by the way, out there on a letter that a guy wrote to the Connecticut law enforcement, and I would encourage you to get out there and read it. It's an open letter to law enforcement, and it's actually too long for me to read here, but it was very, very, very well written and very clear. In other news, a Russian warship has docked in Havana Harbor. Hello. The Cold War is on again, and apparently we're decimating our own military in favor of allowing our enemies to continue to build and grow theirs. And I'm not just talking about Russia. I'm also talking about China. Yesterday, the Arizona governor vetoed the religious freedom bill, even though she had multiple constitutional attorneys tell her that what she was hearing as ad hoc testimony that was that denigrated the bill and its purposes was wrong. These constitutional. She had letters written to her by a group of constitutional attorneys and professors who said that what they're telling you about the bill and the reason they're throwing it under the bus is not true. And she vetoed it anyway. You know, it's interesting. The NFL threatened her with not having the Super Bowl in Arizona if she signed the bill. And frankly, ladies and gentlemen, as far as I'm concerned, that's a reason for you to now write to the NFL and tell them that you will boycott any and all games. You won't watch any. You will not buy season tickets. You won't wear football jerseys. You're done, and they're finished. We don't do politics in the United States based on pressure from the NFL about whether or not you're going to get the Super Bowl in your state. I don't care whether the bill was good or bad for Arizona. The fact that the NFL would come out and apply a coercive tactic like that involves billions of dollars is enough reason for me to never, ever watch another football game again. And you need to let them know why you're boycotting them. It should be a national outrage that these bunch of pussies running around screaming bloody murder that they're not getting paid enough when they're making $4, $8, $9, $12 million a year have the unmitigated nerve to stand out there. And by the way, the NFL is a not-for-profit organization being supported by the theft of taxes that would relieve you, the American taxpayer. They're making billions. I'm telling you, I hate professional sports, and I'll tell you why. Because not only are they coercive and two-faced and scamming, conniving, thieving cutthroats, they jack your prices up to these unconscionable levels that you can't even take your kid to a football game anymore. And when you do, it's $5-7 for what? A lousy, crappy hot dog? You could buy the entire pack for $1 at your local food store. And then they have the nerve to sit here and threaten a state with the loss of billions of dollars in revenue if they vote against something that isn't even what it's been labeled as. What makes the senior people at the NFL constitutional authorities? By the way, professional sports, for the record, is nothing more than a misdirection and an outlet for testosterone that would have every young American male in the country facing down on Washington with pitchforks, ropes, torches, and shotguns, chasing the scum out of there and cleaning our government out. That's my personal opinion on professional sports. It's meant to do nothing more. It's the bread and circuses of Rome. Okay. Man, that just galls me. Ronan Farrow. I don't normally do this kind of stuff, but this just shows you how ridiculous the media is. He started a show 3 days ago on MSNBC, a brand new show. And he's never been on camera before. And after 3 days on the air, they gave him the Cronkite Award for Excellence in Journalism. I mean, that sounds like Barack Obama winning the Nobel Peace Prize before he'd actually ever accomplished anything. I got to tell you, people, the number and the amount of the stuff that's going on out here is just, there is so much of it. And, you know, the case of law enforcement and abuses on that. I mean, here's an article. Officer shoots a 70-year-old man who's reaching for his cane. Guys, what part of this don't we get that law enforcement and the police state are completely out of control? How many incidents are we going to allow to go on like this? Here's another one, by the way, and you should type this one in. Ann Coulter wrote an article called "Raise the Minimum Wage to $14 an Hour," using this one weird trick, and that's a play on words based on that stupid ad that you keep seeing. You know how you can save in insurance with using this one weird trick. It's a click-through ad that's making, I guess, millions for somebody. That is an excellent article, and I strongly encourage you to find it and read it because it does matter. She has some very, very good points in there about how the real purpose, what's really happening here is that the endless thirst by corporations to have ever lower wage earners and reducing the quality of work while simultaneously destroying the labor market in the United States for native-born Americans is what's really motivating immigration. Very, very well-written article. I encourage you. I mean, I'm not saying I agree with it 100% because Ann Coulter sometimes can go a little over the top. But I am going to tell you, and she's a staunch Republican, which I have a problem with because I don't think the Republicans are actually representing us. I think they're representing their party. Yesterday, a court ordered the removal of the anti-Islamic film that from YouTube. Now, Google has been pushing back and refusing to remove this film, which was the excuse used in the Benghazi attacks. And they're not forcing Google to remove it for the reason you might think. They're forcing Google to remove it because the woman who was in it says that as a result of its being shown everywhere, she's getting death threats and stuff like that, and that under a copyright limitation, she's begging for this thing to be pulled. So, the other thing I wanted to bring out as cattle prices, ladies and gentlemen, are at an all-time low, and 63-year low. And I got to tell you, that's also why we are having food and food inflation in this country. The prices that are at an all-time low, but the price of beef is going through the roof. Have you noticed? Well, guess what? The cattle herds are also at an all-time low. And that ought to be telling you something because we are getting set up in this nation for a staggering food emergency. And I'm going to tell you, if you are not taking advantage of the co-op, the food co-op that we have with Battery Station, you're going to be sorry. If you are not preparing and if you're not local and you listen to our program and you're from somewhere else in the country, I get it. You can't participate with us in that way, but there are plenty of other ways that you can do locally in your own community. And I'm going to tell you, we are looking at a food emergency in the United States of America that is going to be terrifying and completely outside the scope of anything that anyone in the United States has ever known or experienced before, including the Great Depression. So please do yourself a favor and begin to prepare for your family and yourself if you haven't already, at least in the way of food. The new currency, folks, under an economic fiscal collapse is going to be food, medicine, and ammunition. I strongly encourage you to buy all three in massive quantities. Okay, we're going to wrap this show for the day. I'd like to hear from you. If you'd like to communicate with me, you can do so by sending me an email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. You can find us on the web by going to americasvoicenow.org. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/americasvoicenow. You can find our YouTube channel where we post every show that we do up on YouTube. They're also available on our website. But on YouTube, you can find us at youtube.com/americasvoicenow. I would encourage you, if you find any of these programs to be useful to you in any way, shape, or form, please share them with your circle of influence. Who is that? Anyone that you communicate with, anyone you know that you think might be interested in hearing from you. Just send them a link and say, hey, here's a show you ought to watch. Here's a segment that makes sense. You can also find us on Patriot FB. And if you are not a member of Patriot FB yet, I strongly encourage you to become one. It is patriotfb.com. That's like Facebook. All right. Thanks for riding with us today. We're going to wrap. Email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. And you all have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early. Today is Thursday. Tomorrow will be TGIF. If you can support us in any way, we appreciate that as well. We'll see you tomorrow morning.